This is the Loca, Dr. Lara here, and I want to begin by thanking these three beautiful souls for inviting me to be here today. I still get nervous, you know, even though I have done many keynotes, and I know you are sitting there in your living room, in front of the beach, in your kitchen table, wherever you are. I really appreciate you being here today, listening to this keynote. My Twitter handle is right there on the screen. Yes, like Carol says, I'm the author of Toma la Palabra and Mi Cuaderno de Dictado. Most of my trainings or most of my keynotes that I do are in Spanish. So sometimes I second guess myself, you know, and I think, is my English going to be good enough? So I think one of the reasons why also they invited me is because I am an emergent bilingual. I'm a person with an accent. So people know me, yes, she is la maestra, she is la señora del pelo blanco, she is, you know, the lady with the accent, whatever it is. I am here, and yes, we're not going to be silenced, and we are going to tell our story. When someone asked me, why don't you tell your story? And I say, why my story? My story is boring. They said, no, your story is the story of many students. So go ahead and tell your story. So I am here. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. But before that, I was, you know, looking at Carol Salva, and she's in Cozumel. I was in Puerto Vallarta, and I still do the zip lining. So that's me and my action shots being crazy and enjoying a little bit of time off, because we're going to hit it hard starting next week with a lot of staff development and a lot of face-to-face trainings with teachers. The whole purpose of education is to turn mirrors into windows. Is not just you and isolated, is how can people see through your story and connect to where you are. People see me and they say, oh, Dr. Lara, look at what she has done. No, you haven't seen my story. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about me, telling my story as a multi-language learner. You know, I just know I'm happy to say that I have reached advanced high on TELPAS. I second guess myself. You know, in Texas, we have ratings, of course, like in many other states. So every time I speak, I tell them, see, I'm going to talk in English so you know that I am advanced high on the assessment, the state assessment. I was born and raised in Mexico City a long time ago, and that's me. That's the picture of that little girl. So when I look at that, I question myself, if I had known that I was going to be very adventurous and go to a different country and do trainings and keynotes in another language, I would not have believed it myself. There's a little, you know, an area in Mexico City that is called Ciudad Satélite. So if there's anyone there that knows Mexico City, now it's called Ciudad de Mexico. We no longer call it DF. So I'm from Ciudad Satélite. And so I'm a Chilanga. So people from Mexico City, they call them Chilangos. So I am a Chilanga. And so I call from Chilangolandia. I was in Mexico City many months ago, and you can see that airplane right there. Didn't really ask for permission. I ended up in San Antonio, Texas. So they say, well, a lot of immigrants come across the border, you know, swimming through the river or whatever. I didn't. I just flew and I stayed. Didn't really ask for permission, but I'm here in San Antonio, Texas, where it's very, very hot right now. And so, yes, I have been in education since my hair was brown, many, many years ago, over 30 years. And I'm a grandmother, and my grandkids say, Grandma, why are you not a traditional grandmother? Because I have a story to tell. I need to be out there in the trenches, talking to teachers and reminding them what we have to do to really be successful and help others be successful. So I came the last year of high school, but then I went and I got a bachelor's degree in education. And I thought everything was going well. I finished, I took my test, I passed, but in the law in 1990, said that if you are undocumented, if you have no papers, even though you pass your state assessment, you cannot be certified. So back then, I was undocumented, so I did not have my certification. But there's always good souls that are gonna say, yes, we're going to give you a job. So St. John Bosco Catholic School, the nun said, you know what, the public school is not going to give you a job. We're going to give you a job. It really doesn't matter. So they really helped me go through the motions and get my papers. I tell the story very quickly, but it took me many years to, yes, I was an alien because the cards back then said resident alien. So look at, in 1993, I became a resident alien. So 12 years later, so 12 years knowing that your heart is pumping, that you are undocumented, that people, even though I don't know what idea they have, sometimes they see you and they say, well, you don't look Mexican, and I don't know what type of look I have to be Mexican. But, you know, you open your mouth and they know that, you know, they tell you, you have an accent. Well, I think everybody has an accent, thanks. And no, when you become a citizen, your accent stays with you. But that's one of the things that stay with you that we should be very proud of. And that's something that is so personal that when we look at our students, it's going to be really, really important not to get trapped in an idea that someone has an accent. And that's part of the conversation that I have with people, because there's always someone, and at the end I'm going to share with you someone who's going to remind you that you still speak different, that you still speak funny. So now that I was documented, notice I say undocumented and documented, I was able to get a job in the public school system. So I was able, I got permission now to be promoted to be a teacher in the public school system. So I had the privilege of working in Northside Independent School District, and then I worked for the state. I was at the Education Service Center Region 20, and I've always had the privilege to have the best job. I've always had the best job. Everywhere I am, I have the best job. And right now, of course, working for Silas Education, I have the best job because I get to talk to teachers about best practices with emergent bilingual students. And yes, my lens is Spanish-English, but I know that other languages are going to be really important, and we have to embrace that. So in February of 2001, I finally took the oath to be an American citizen. 21 years later, people, 21 years, people say, oh my gosh, everybody comes into this country and it's so easy to get your papers and become a citizen. I still know that when I took the oath and I listened to the national anthem, I can cry because this country has given me the opportunity, but it's not free. We come and we have to work day in and day out to get to where we want to get. People see the product or whatever you have become, but they don't know what it is to really get there. So when I hear refugees, when I hear about immigrants, when I hear about the stories, yes, the story is there to be told. I didn't know I was a dreamer, but I consider myself a dreamer, even though that title was not there back then. But there's still a lot of stories like that. I know Fernando and Ximena, they're still waiting for that DACA issue to be resolved. This was in 2020 when they became, they're still DACA students and they finished high school. And I had the privilege of going to their graduation. And they're so proud and they got scholarships to the universities. But issues that have not been resolved, we still need to talk about those issues. So I decided to learn more. And after several years, I went back to school. I remember when my daughter saying, Mom, you're setting the bar too high. I said, I don't know enough. I need to learn about culture, literacy, and language. I need to know what it is to be an emergent bilingual. I need to know what it is that we have to do to help students. Not just knowing my story, but knowing what's out there to really help students. So I ask you, when was the last time that you were in an uncomfortable situation? I hear a lot of people say, oh, my Spanish is so bad, I don't want to use it. Well, I didn't have a choice. My English was so bad and I had to do it. And I had to embarrass myself every single time. I remember being in school and I remember my sweaty palms. I remember I wanted to be invisible the last year of high school. Me wanting to cry because the teachers were going to call on me and I was not going to be able to have the answer. And I wish someone had been like Pam or Nancy Motley or Carol Salva or Tan, who was my teacher. It's like, I didn't know about sentence stems, but I could have used sentence stems, you know, when I was in my last year of high school. So when they asked me to tell my story, I came up with this acronym, We Care. And those are beautiful teachers, and maybe some of you are there watching, because teachers are superheroes. Teachers are the ones that are out there in the trenches, day in and day out. Teachers work very diligently, and they do the best they can with what they have. And sometimes they don't know what to do because they have not been trained. I don't know if we haven't done justice to teachers. We have to do a lot of work once they're out of the university. But we have done great strides, and we're making a difference because teachers are there working with all of our immigrant students that are coming into our classrooms. So the W stands for welcome their accent. That is one of the things that I always think about, because every time I open my mouth, I know that I speak that way. But having a foreign accent is the norm. It doesn't make you less a bilingual because you have an accent. It does not make you less intelligent. There's respected scholars, writers, politicians who speak with an accent. And actually having an accent is the norm. If you have not read Francois Grosjean's book, his book is called Bilingual Life and Reality. And he talks about, well, why do people have accents? Even my little muñequita has an accent. She says, what? You know, if your second language has a sound that is not found in the first language, you're going to use the closest approximation to what you have in your linguistic repertoire, and it's going to come out funny. That's why there's a lot of words that sometimes we avoid because we are not going to know how to pronounce them. So that is the very first thing that when we say, well, these kids don't want to talk in the classroom. Of course they don't want to talk in the classroom. It takes just one time to be embarrassed, not to want to share anymore. So we have to be very, very aware that if you're learning English as a second language, especially if you are older, because I did not grow up speaking English. I learned English in my early 20s, late teens, and it is possible to learn it, but it's going to come out differently. So think about how we pronounce things. You know, we go to the Starbucks to use the Wi-Fi because we need the Bluetooth, you know, and so sometimes people speak English using Spanish phonology. And you even see that, you know, in different, because English is very difficult. Yes, English can be weird. It can be understood through tough, thorough thought, though. And I still have to think how to say those words because it's like, if they look the same and you have to pronounce them differently. So in case of emergency, I pray to Jesus. I have some of these images that are funny, but sometimes it's really hurtful. I don't know how to take it anymore because when you speak, people want to say things to support you. And sometimes they say, your accent is so cute. And I don't know if to laugh or to be happy or to take it as a compliment. So there's a lot of things that we're told constantly that you don't know how to take them anymore. Sometimes, you know, of course I have to be politically correct and not punch people in the face. I have to be elegant. But I've been told things like, you know what, you have very good vocabulary. They just need to say for being an immigrant or for being a Mexican for not speaking English really well. You wouldn't go to just someone who speaks English and tell them you have very good vocabulary. And yet I hear that. Not a long time ago, someone that I hadn't seen for a long time came and talked to me and she said, hi, Mónica, how are you? I haven't seen you in such a long time. And then the second question was, how many years have you been in the United States? I said, well, a little over 40 years. What was the next statement? And you still have an accent? So people don't understand what it really means. You go to different places, take it easy, my friend. You're gonna see how the mixing of languages is going to be out there everywhere we go. But if we're not careful, an accent may give us the wrong impression. We may think, these kids have not tried hard enough to learn the language. But, you know, this is the book that I was telling you about. Remember that the accent is a result of neuromuscular factors and not lack of effort. And so that's really very important for us. You know, sometimes, yes, we talk about embracing kids, we talk about accommodating for their needs, but this is a big issue for an immigrant, someone who is struggling to survive on a day-to-day basis, And guess why parents don't want to come to the school? It may be one of the reasons why they don't want to come and participate in school. So don't take this very lightly, because it's something that is really very important. Also, having an accent is going to mark you as a member of a group. You know, I don't know how many of you guys or you all, or I'm y'all, you know, in Texas, we are y'all. So look at Sofia Vergara. She's going to say, but I am a Latin, and so I get to feel whatever I want. And she emphasizes that because that's going to mark you as a member of society. What is the E in we care? I, the advantages. What are the advantages of being bilingual? I don't understand why in this country we have not embraced raising kids multilingual from the onset, from the time they are early on in school. Look at how bad we rank in foreign language learning. We are like way at the bottom compared to other countries. This is a first country. This is not a country in development, and we still don't understand that being multilingual is so powerful, is so much better. Your brain plasticity is going to be there, making more connections, but we still think that if you speak another language, it's a problem to solve, and we don't see it as an asset. You know, usually we start with all these labels, you know, we started with this one many, many years ago, limited English proficient. It's like if they tell you limited Russian proficient or limited French proficient, well, you just don't speak the language. Why do they say limited? But it's almost like saying, learn English, please. That's what, to me, the term LEP was. And then if you complete the home language survey, the very first thing that you have to answer is which language you speak at home. And then what is the very first thing if you are not proficient in English? You're at risk. That's the label. Here in Texas, that's the label that we give kids. You're at risk. And I say, what? A risk of being smarter than the rest? So so we move and we make a little bit of progress. We move from LEP to English language learner. Then we move to emergent bilinguals. Now that is the term that we have, emergent bilinguals, extremely diverse group of students representing many ages, languages, cultures, ethnicities, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where we are. But I wish we call students multi-language learners, because that's who we are. We're trying to be better at labeling, because here in the United States, we label everything and everybody. So I would much rather be a multi-language learner than limited English proficient students. So I am the advantages. We continue talking about being bilingual is going to delay the development of dementia. It's going to develop mental abilities. It's going to help you connect one language to another. And, you may be overqualified like the mariachis. It helps to learn another language or to know another language, but these people sometimes are overqualified. And think about this. If you have a very good foundation in your primary language, you're going to make connections. Dr. Kathy Escamilla says, let's teach English better, not faster. How do we teach English better? Teaching Spanish better. That's why it's so important to do staff development in Spanish. That's why Toma la Palabra is the book that I use to do professional development. Why are we going to train teachers to doing staff development in English when they have to deliver instruction in Spanish in dual language classrooms? The better I know my content in science, if I know the partes de la célula, mitochondria, ribosoma, membrana, etc., when you present this in English, I already know it. All I need is the label in English, but I already know the concepts and I already know the language. So let's teach English better, not faster, by creating a dual language program that is very robust. Ask yourself, how is my dual language program? How many sessions do I go to that are in Spanish where I'm going to learn best practices, where I'm going to practice that oracy that is supporting the literacy? The better I speak, the better I read, and the better I write as a teacher, because there's language loss. As teachers, we still need to equip ourselves with that information that we need to be better at instructing students in content areas in Spanish. Many dual language teachers, they just speak a little bit of Spanish and then they ask them to be dual language teachers or bilingual teachers, but we never give them staff development in math, science, social studies, or whatever content area you teach in Spanish. When do we do this? When we go to staff development in English and then we still have to do all the legwork to do it in Spanish. Teachers don't have any more time in their 24 hours and they need to sleep. So it's very important that we provide teachers with staff development in Spanish, with Spanish resources that they can read and they can connect with. So many teachers I know are here, have tomado la palabra, and we have done it, and they really appreciate it. We do the legwork, and then we provide that information for teachers. Knowing cognates, again, we go back to teach English better, not faster. The better my Spanish, the better my English is going to be. The advantages. I have 5 grandchildren. Unfortunately, only 3 of them are bilingual. Why? Because in the attendance zone, there's no dual language programs. And it's very difficult to raise kids that are bilingual. And the farthest from the border, the harder it is. Research shows that by the 3rd generation, the language is lost. Think about you. Probably your parents taught you Spanish. But then, like I used to tell my kids, my own children, don't send the kids to school yet. Don't contaminate them with English. They're going to learn it anyway. They start Spanish, learning Spanish, and then they go to school and they realize that the mom is the only crazy one that speaks Spanish. Then they start interacting in English. And so when they come home, you talk to them in Spanish and they respond in English. And it's very difficult to keep telling them en español, vamos a hablar español. The kids end up speaking English. And then if they get married to, like my daughters, I love my son-in-laws, but they're limitados monolingües, like I say, they're limited monolinguals. You know, they don't speak Spanish. So it's very difficult to raise kids that are bilingual. The C in We Care, connect their background. We heard Pam, we heard Dr. Vu, we heard them talk about the cultural capital. If I had $1 for every time I hear that kids don't have any background, kids don't have any language, I would be rich. I would not be doing keynotes. They don't have the background of the American school system. And so what happens? Look at this caravan of kids. They're coming, look at the background they have. They know about political oppression. They know about geographical boundaries. They know what it is not to have shelter, not to have the best resources. They know what immigration is all about. They may not know the nomenclature or the vocabulary that is attached to their experiences, but they have rich experiences. And these kids that are coming from Mexico, Central America, Honduras, wherever they're coming from, they have rich backgrounds. I don't know how many of you remember this Nicaraguan boy in 2021. He was actually filmed crying on the border. And he said, me dejaron botado, which means they dumped me. You know, the coyotes dumped me. And someone found him. And when he was reunited with his mom, many weeks later, he had that happy face. And they asked him, what do you like the most? And he says, I want to go back to school because I love math. And that was Univision. It was not even one of the English-speaking networks. It was Univision who took the time to go and tell them and ask him, what do you like about school? But when these kids get into our classrooms, all we see is what they don't have. We have to see what they have. And Dr. Carol Salva does a great job talking about what, you know, how can we bring that out from kids when they are in our classrooms. John Silas and I had the opportunity, right, when the pandemic hit, to go to Honduras and work with teachers. You have no idea how much those teachers and those kids gave us, much more than what we could have given them. We went to Bonito Oriental in Honduras, beautiful place, a lot of need. But when we talked to the teachers, they were eating out of our hands, whatever it was, but we were looking at their classrooms and we were looking at, like, those little girls on the right-hand side that you see on the screen. They were comerciantes. They could sell you whatever. They knew math, they didn't need paper or pencil, and they knew how to talk to adults. So when we actually came back, we wrote a blog, and you can still find the blog, because when we, you know, you go with your narrow mentality, what can we give them? And what these teachers' biggest worries were not about resources, books, technology. They were about the health and well-being of their students. That's what they were worried about. So we developed those connections and we learned how privileged we are here in the United States when we're trying to ask, oh, I need more resources. I need more of this. All they have is some paper and some instruments to write, but they make connections and they make kids participate and feel valued. And we were able to see that with those kids. And, you know, when you don't have background, you sometimes think that you're not adequate, but it's really, you don't have the background from the United States. So I'm going to do a little test for you. So you're going to write number 1, number 2, number 3, or number 4 in the chat. And then Carol and Tan and Katie can, you know, check that. So I'm going to show you 4 images. So when we're talking about not having background, is it really not having background, or is it really the way you grew up and you make no connection? So I'm going to show you 4 images. So you're going to tell me I'm a 4 because I know all the 4 images and I can tell you who those images are. I'm a 3, and you know, getting down to I'm a 2 or I'm a 1, I'm at risk. I need some type of tutoring. So here are the images. This is the first image. So that would be a 1 if you know who that is. This is another image. You would be a 2. This is a 3. And this is a 4. So I would like to, I don't know, Tan or Carol, I mean, I don't know what you are, but I'm trying to see. Okay, all right, so think about how many, look at the chat and look at the numbers. I mean, of course, maybe the 4s come from Mexico and you know what that who they are, but how many people would rank themselves like a 1, or, you know? So here's where we say, we think tier 1, tier 2, and then everybody from your classroom goes to tier 2 or tier 3. The person that needs the tier 2 or 3 is the teacher, not the kids, you know? Or these kids are confused. No, the confused person is the teacher, not the kid. So we need to learn about them. So what if I showed you, instead of that one, I show you 4 different images. I show you this one, then I show you this one, I show you this one, and I show you this one. And then I make a connection for you. And I tell you, you know, El Chavo del Ocho was like Dennis the Menace here. You know, Jose Lopez Portillo, well, he was a president when Ronald Reagan was the president. You know, La Banda Tibiriche, of course, a little more fresa, you know, a little more, less weird than Kiss. And then I show you the last image, El Ángel de la Independencia and the Washington Monument. So how am I making connections for kids instead of saying, oh, these kids don't have any background? Of course, they're not gonna have the background because they did not grow up in this country. That was the very first thing that I remember when I was going through teacher education classes. And I had no background if you wanted to label me. So how are we really valuing what they bring? How do we connect their background to the new knowledge that we want them to learn through the Common Core or the text essential knowledge and skills or whatever standards you're using? So as we're thinking about our students, how are we connecting their background? Drawing on your students' background knowledge and experiences is going to be effective to bridge. And we know beautiful Luis Moll, he's talked about funds of knowledge. People are competent, they have knowledge, and their life experiences have given them that knowledge. So that's very important for us to remember. The A in we care, avoid stereotypes. So when we're looking at that, the language spoken in the house is going to have a positive effect in whatever it is that you're doing in the classroom. Stop telling parents, don't speak to your kids in the primary language, speak English. What if they don't know English? How are they going to speak to them? Their first language is going to be a foundation for the second one. The better that language is, the better the second language is going to be. That's why going back to, do you have a robust bilingual dual language program? Do you really emphasize and bring that pride with the first language, or are we still freaking out? No, let's put these kids in English. Put the kids in English because that's what's important. And then, you know, the bilingual teachers are told, well, you're a bilingual teacher, but don't speak Spanish to the kids. I know that because I'm in classrooms and I hear those stories. If we're learning 2 languages simultaneously, we are going to know grammatical systems and their languages, and we're not going to be confused. Sometimes we hear, oh, these kids are confused. No, the confused is the adult. The kid is not confused. So as we're looking at avoiding stereotypes, I mean, just take a look at this. If you read it silently, if you're bilingual, We probably can decipher what it is. En ese momento, when you publish un meme in English and español, y todos los followers de la page lo entienden perfectly because son bilingües and pueden controlar leer dos idiomas at the same tiempo. If you're bilingual English, Spanish, you're not confused. You know exactly what it is. Why? Because you're a translanguager. And that's what translanguagers do. You know, translanguaging is using your languages, two languages in the same conversation, is not a deficit. It's part of your linguistic configuration, and it's effective communication, and it becomes the norm. We know the work of Ofelia Garcia, Francois Grosjean. Most of the time, they're not talking about you. So sometimes people think, you know, oh, they're talking about me, and that's why they're talking in the other language. Or what is it that is happening? That they're mixing languages. Well, you know, not a long time ago, I went to South America, and the Quechuas and the ones that speak Quechua and Spanish, they speak Quechuañol. The people that speak Spanish and Portuguese, they speak Portuñol. So anywhere in the world where two languages come in contact, translanguaging is going to happen. Why? Because we don't have two separate monolingual brains. We have one bilingual brain that is connected, and that's the way we translanguagers operate. And yes, that is who we are as bilingual people. We're dual people. We are translanguagers. You know, social media and commercials, companies know about that, and they use it. Mueve tu water. Stop. Yeah, I love the other one. Se necesita delivery guy. So that one is like, you know, perfect. How about this one? Talk about cultural capital, faster than the flying chancla. This is an insurance company. They know the power of the chancla, and they know that if that insurance company is faster than the flying chancla, it's a good insurance company. And this one, have a text-mex emergency, call 911. I remember hearing Juan, you know, Juan, when they say Juan, but it's really Juan. So as we're avoiding stereotypes, students, don't learn to read twice. Please don't put kids in kindergarten or teach them with kindergarten materials when they're in high school. You're not stupid. If you know how to read in your primary language, you don't need to learn to read twice. You already know cause and effect, drawing conclusions. You just need to use best practices in the classroom. They don't need to learn the alphabet, the colors, or the numbers in isolation. They don't need to learn the letter sounds, these phonics issues, or the science of reading. I mean, we need to be very, very cautious what we pick and select when we are teaching English learners who are speakers of other languages. And they benefit from sheltered instruction. We need that instrucción contextualizada en el aula. We need to draw from all these practices. You have great people who are present right now, the leaders of this summit. They're experts in the field and how you do it. You heard Nancy Motley earlier. She does a great job with sheltering instruction. You don't need to speak the language of the kids to do an excellent job instructing them and helping them be successful. Respect their culture. That's the R, and I know I'm looking at the clock, it's going fast. But the R in we care, respect their culture, no matter where they're coming from. This comes from Dr. Michelle Izquierdo, who is a member in our team. There may be a disconnect between US American cultural norms and other cultural norms, and those may impact students socially, emotionally, and instructionally. So we need to respect who they are. And we heard these beautiful speakers before me that talked about cultural capital, very, very important. How do we get to know people? I know Pam talked about how the system in the United States is very different than in other countries. I can tell you in Mexico, parents don't go to schools. You know, there's a social arena that it's very different. School, you just send the kids to school, but there's no events. There's really no grandiose things to go to. When they come here, they don't know. They don't know that school, in order for you to show that you care, you need to go to the school. What can we do for that? Why is it important? You can have those cafecitos with parents. I remember working with Eagle Pass ISD. I always used to say it should be Mexico ISD, you know, Eagle Pass in the border. And we used to do, parents wouldn't come. And as I was working with the district, I said, why don't we have meetings at the laundromat? Why don't we have meetings where parents are gathering? Take your stuff and go and talk to them and listen to their stories. Listen more than you speak. Allow them to talk to you, to learn from them. Once you make a connection, it's all about making connections, developing relationships with parents. They're not going to come if you send an email. They're not going to come if you send a flyer. They're not going to read it. And if they have a kid like mine, that the flyer was all crunched up at the bottom of the backpack, you never see it. We need to go and find parents wherever they are, and we need to listen to them and listen to their stories. Language skills and cross-cultural understanding is going to change the world as we're talking about this. And the E in We Care, expect results with perseverance and with the efforts that we see teachers putting in and day out. We're going to see that multi-language learners are going to become bilingual, bicultural, and biliterate. Many of them lose not just the language, but they lose the culture. And it's very sad to see that they don't know, or sometimes they're embarrassed. So one of the goals, you know, sometimes they say, they ask me, do you have toma la palabra in English? I said, no, toma la palabra means take the word, you know, take the floor. It's time for us to talk. That's why the book is called Toma la Palabra. It is our turn to speak. It's our turn to elevate that primary language, the status of the primary language, the prestige of primary languages. So as we work with kids, they can learn English when we teach them, and when we teach them using these strategies. As we're working with them, again, remember, teach English better, not faster. Multi-language learners can be successful. And so as we look at the systems and processes in our school, we have a great book that is out there that is called ELs in Texas, What School Leaders Need to Know. It's not just about Texas, but look at your systems. Do you have same for everyone? Do you have supports for every need? Or do we address the inequality, moving from equality to equity to justice? What are the systems and processes in your school? Because the time to create a stellar program is now, not when we have a different school leader, not when we have the best resources. It's all about what we are doing now with kids. Develop the systems to take care of the bilingual and the ESO, whatever programs you have, but taking care of the affective, linguistic, and cognitive domains. The 3 domains are very, very important. Moving from equality to equity to reality to liberation. Are we really providing our dual language students, our emergent bilinguals, multilingual learners with liberation? Can they be who they are? Can they develop to their full potential? Do they feel safe in classrooms? It doesn't matter what their background is or how they speak English or what language they speak as their primary language. Beautiful image by Valentina Gonzalez. How do we move from assimilation to acculturation? How do we really create this space for kids to be successful? I told you earlier on, you know, there's always someone who's going to burst your bubble. There's always going to be someone who's going to remind you that you're an English learner. So someone in 2020 told me, as your friend, knowing how I am all bilingual and speak Spanish and English, but he said, as your friend, I need to tell you that you need to assimilate. Is long overdue. Why? Because I've been here in this country for over 40 years. Guess what? Not speaking Spanish or not being a translanguager, you better, you know, cut off my legs and my arms. I am a translanguager and I'm here to stay. And so when we do the we care attitude, I invite you to cup your hands like this, like the image. As we are doing the we care and we really embrace what we're doing, if you trace a line around you, that's the heart. I cannot teach you information if we don't have the heart. That's the very first thing that we need to remember when we first start next school year. Ask yourself, do I have a heart? Because if we don't have the heart, it doesn't matter what resources you have, we're not going to be able to support our emergent bilinguals, our multi-language learners. One thing that all students need is the trust and belief that their teachers understand their story, their obstacles, and their triumphs, and will stand up for them when needed. So, sí se puede. Thank you so much for allowing me the space to be here and to share my story. You have my admiration, teacher, who's sitting there in front of the screen. Thank you so much, Con, Katie, and Carol, for the opportunity. I love you, and I hope I can see you in person at Toma la Palabra one of these days. Thank you so much.